Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on Tales of the Walking Dead. This video does contain spoilers for the entire show, so please do keep that in mind. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. The opening episode focuses on Terry Crews' character Joe as well as Olivia Munn's character Evie. It's been 402 days since the apocalypse began, and Joe has been spending his time in his nicely stocked up bunker, only really going up to the surface to let his dog go to the toilet. The opening couple of minutes of this episode were quite intriguing, and I was looking forward to seeing where this story was going to go, but then it all quickly falls apart at around the 3-minute mark. 3 minutes into the episode, Joe takes his dog upstairs to use the toilet, and then they notice some walkers are coming towards them, so he activates this trap that he's built, which erects like this circular barrier, which puts a barrier between him and the walkers and his dog as well. So they're safe inside this barrier, and the walkers are just kind of walking towards the barrier, getting stuck on it. And for some reason his dog, I guess, panics and goes to attack one of the walkers. And this attack takes place in slow motion for some reason and just looks really cheesy. It attacks the walker, and then like this scene quickly cuts to black, and then what we see next is the walker on top of the dog eating it. And how did this even happen? Like, it just fades out and now the dog is dead. It's just so horrendously edited. It's just really badly put together, really badly edited. And then we have, to top it all off, we have Terry Crews. He gives this really unconvincing cry of, no, no more, no. Like, pretending to be upset because his dog is dead. And it just didn't convince me at all. It was kind of bad acting, in my opinion. And this whole scene just made me laugh. It just made me laugh out loud. Obviously, this is supposed to be an emotional scene. Oh my god, the dog is dead. But I just found it hilarious because it was just so badly acted, so badly put together. And, only 3 minutes into the Tales of the Walking Dead series, I already found myself shaking my head thinking, what the hell am I watching? What is this? So yeah, not a good start. So after his dog dies, Joe decides to leave the bunker in search of this woman he was talking to on the internet before the apocalypse began. And it looks like she's another prepper like him. And he has this really long chat log of all their conversations that he's printed off, which they had together. And he makes it his mission to go find her. He gets on his motorbike and leaves. And then Olivia Munn's character pops his bike's tyres and takes him hostage. Now, I'm just going to come out and say it. I find Olivia Munn's character Evie to be just really, really irritating. She's one of these kind of hippie characters who believes that the universe will provide for her and believes in healing crystals and mentions energy vampires, whatever the hell that is. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Scott Gimple himself believes in some of this nonsense. It really wouldn't. But yeah, she's just so irritating. She's not the kind of person who I would choose to hang out with in real life, because I think if I had a conversation with her, I would actually be able to feel my brain cells just committing suicide every time she spoke. So I don't like her character. And she's also a vegan, which I don't actually care about. People can eat what they want. I don't really care. I'm not going to criticize her for being a vegan. That doesn't bother me what diet you have. But the reason why I mention it is because this then leads into what is possibly one of the dumbest lines I've ever seen in the Walking Dead universe. So she says she's a vegan, and then afterwards, she pulls out a gun on Terry Crews' character, and he says this. I'll just show you the clip now.
Besides, it's not a request.
That doesn't seem like a vegan's kind of gun.
That doesn't look like a vegan's kind of gun. What does that even mean? What does that actually mean? Does he only think that vegans carry guns made of fucking corn? What doesn't make any sense? That doesn't look like a vegan's type of gun. Well, what is a vegan's type of gun? Do vegans have special guns? Who writes this shit? Anyway, the two then decide to go on a road trip across the US to try and find this lady who Joe is searching for. And at around the 25-minute mark, their bike is stolen by some dude who steals their bike and leaves a goat with a message written on cardboard around its neck saying, "Thanks for the bike." I just don't understand. So you're telling me this dude, this thief, saw there was a bike there which he could steal, and instead of just taking the bike and getting away as quick as possible, he decided to leave a goat with a handwritten message. Why? Why not just take the bike? Unless this is like his criminal calling card or something. Like in Home Alone, where the sticky bandits, they always make sure the taps are left on in every house that they rob. Maybe this is what he does. Maybe he just leaves goats when he robs people. Maybe if he were to rob a bank, he'd leave a goat in the bank vault. I don't know. That's the only explanation I can get for this, because I just don't get it. Anyway, the episode culminates in Joe making his way to Sandra's location, Sandra being the prepper that he was talking to at the start of the episode, and he makes his way into her bunker and she meets him, and yeah, she's happy to see him, and it looks like we're going to get a nice happy ending. So then he sits down to have some food, and oh my god, shock horror, it turns out the brownie that she's given him is laced with drugs. And then she says to him, right, I need to freshen up or something whilst he's like being drugged up. And then she comes back looking like the Joker for some reason. I don't know what's going on at this point. I feel like I've taken some drugs watching this episode. Anyway, it turns out that Sandra is extremely paranoid and she thinks that Joe is actually trying to steal the bunker from her. You know, he hasn't come in good faith. He's come to steal it from her. And she tries to stab him. She tries to stab him with a knife. And the knife is deflected by the healing crystal that he's wearing around his neck that Evie put on him. Yes, that actually happens. The healing crystal saves him. Anyway, as one would predict, Evie arrives at just the nick of time to save Joe, and she stabs Sandra. I think she throws a knife at him, and kills her. And then instead of these two, you know, staying in this well-stocked-up safe bunker, they both decide to leave and go God knows where, I don't know. But they decide to leave, and that's it. That's the first episode of Tales of the Walking Dead. A really, really weird episode to start your new series with. Like, really, this is the episode you choose. I mean, not that the rest of the episodes are much better, which you will shortly find out. But, yeah, this is such a bizarre opening episode. Just really not good at all. Doesn't give you a great good impression of the series. So, yeah, episode 1 is a bit of a dud. But episode 2... is even worse. So let's talk about that now. Episode 2. Oh my god. So episode 2 I found to be just so bad that I didn't even finish it. And this is one of 2 episodes of Tales which I couldn't actually just sit to the end and watch all of it because I just thought it was so bad. And that's saying something. That really is saying something about the quality of this show, because I'm the dude who somehow tortures myself watching Fear the Walking Dead. I still watch that for you, and so I can make videos about it. And I can stomach that because, I mean, Fear the Walking Dead is shit, but at least it's kind of funny with how bad it is. But this episode wasn't even funny. I couldn't even laugh at it. I just found it to be awful. After about 25 minutes, 30 minutes, I was like, I'm done. I can't watch anymore. Episode 2 focuses on 2 ladies called Blair and Gina. And Blair is the boss lady at this insurance company, and Gina is like a receptionist or something. I don't know. And the 2 dislike each other, and it's supposed to be funny seeing these 2 hate each other, I guess, and squabble. I don't know, but I didn't laugh. But anyway, yeah, so this episode is like a bad version of Groundhog Day. So for some reason, these 2 characters, they meet at like this gas station, this petrol station, and they end up dying there. And then they wake up and they can both remember being there, and then they do the same thing over and over again. And it's about them trying not to die at this petrol station because one of like the lorries carrying like the fuel tanker explodes, and it's about them trying to avoid that and not dying. And I don't know what this has to do with The Walking Dead, but okay. I mean, what's next? An episode that features multiple universes, an episode that features time travel? I don't know why we're doing this Groundhog Day scenario in The Walking Dead. I really don't. And also, what I don't understand is that if these 2 characters keep dying when they're going to this petrol station, why not just avoid it? You know, I mean, they make like so many dumb reasons as to why they have to go there when they don't. They could just avoid going there. Problem solved, and you're not going to die. It's not like anyone is forcing them to go there every time they come back to life. They know they're going to die at this certain place. So why do they keep going there over and over again? It also seems like the tanker itself just spontaneously combusts half the time. I mean, the first time the tanker blows up is because Blair, or Gina, I can't remember which one, Gina I believe, fires her shotgun at it. And that makes sense, right? Because yes, I assume that a tanker would blow up. A tanker full of fuel would explode if you fired a shotgun at it. But then later on in the episode, it just seems to like blow up for no reason. There's one scene where she's driving the truck and a walker like jumps on the truck, and the truck doesn't even crash before the explosion effect goes on the screen. It just keeps blowing up over and over again. And half the time I'm thinking, well, why is it blown up now? What's happened now? Like, it feels like the slightest touch, like if you were to even touch the tanker, if even like a drop of water went on the tanker, boom, the whole thing would blow up. I mean, is driving a tanker in the US really this dangerous? Who designs these things? Fucking Al-Qaeda. They just blow up all the time. Anyway, there's not much else for me to say about this episode because I didn't watch the rest of it. I just thought it was awful. I do seem to be in the minority though, or at least from what I've read online, because it does seem like a lot of people on Reddit, at least in the initial reaction thread to this episode on the Walking Dead Reddit page, a lot of people seem to like it. A lot of people were like saying, oh, it's really different. This is really good. I found it funny. I found it interesting. I mean, I can't say I agree with any of that personally, but if that's your opinion, fair enough. But yeah, I seem to be in the minority here because it does seem like, well, at least from what I've read anyway, a lot of people do seem to like it. But I just thought it was a giant waste of time. I also read online that apparently the two characters in this episode, the twist is like that they're dead from the start. They died at the start of the episode in the first explosion and turned into walkers. And this is apparently what walkers experience. This is what happens to them. They experience the same events over and over again. I don't know why. I don't know why that would be the case. Seems a bit dumb to me. I don't really think we need that addition to the Walker lore, but whatever. So, yeah, apparently that's what this episode is supposed to be about. Or at least that's what I've read anyway. It may be incorrect. But, yeah, I hated this episode. Not good. Let's move on to episode 3. Episode 3, otherwise known as the Alpha episode. Now, as someone who is a big fan of Samantha Morton's Alpha, you'd expect that I'd like this episode. But, no, I found it to be rather disappointing. And when it finished, I was just like, is that it? Really? I mean, it's not as bad as episode 1 or 2, but it just kind of drags. It's just very average, very middle of the road. Yeah, I don't really feel like it added anything. Or, well, what it did add, I'm not particularly a fan of either. So, yeah, I can't say I enjoyed this episode either. So, essentially, this plot is about Alpha, or D, as we find out her real name to be in this episode. It's about her living on a boat with this group, and then it turns out that one of the new members of the group is actually a pirate, and he leads the pirate group to the boat, and they take everyone hostage, and then Alpha fights back, and yeah, a lot of people die, and Alpha escapes with Lydia. They sail away on like a little raft away together, and then Alpha runs into the Whisperers in the woods, and that's the end. Whilst I do like the idea of having pirates as antagonists, I mean, I have to say that Fear the Walking Dead, it did the pirates much better way back in Season 2. I'm also not a fan of Alpha meeting the Whisperers at the end of the episode, because I always assumed that Alpha just set up the Whisperers herself, because, the Whisperers, they were a group that very much had the same ideals and morals as she had about, weakness and, crying, showing emotion being a weakness, and that you have to be strong and only the strong survive. So it always seemed like a group that was built in her image. It always felt like she was the one who came up with these ideas and instilled that in the rest of the group. But no, this episode now, it turns out that the Whisperers were already a group which already existed in the Walking Dead universe before Dee ran into them. And then at the end of the episode, it turns out that the Whisperer mask that she wears in The Walking Dead is actually like the skin of the Whisperer leader, the original Whisperer leader who she kills and then takes over as the Whisperers. And I don't know, I think this also just like needlessly complicates things, because we've already had flashback scenes to Alpha in The Walking Dead, and there's a scene in The Walking Dead where she meets Beta for the first time, but now this scene supposedly takes place after Alpha already meets the Whisperers in this episode. So I guess Alpha meets the Whisperers, joins them, ends up on like a supply run with Lydia or something where she isn't wearing a Whisperer outfit or a mask, meets Beta, who then goes back to the Whisperers with her. Or maybe the Whisperers have already died, that original group, and then they reformed the Whisperers. I don't know. It just needlessly complicates things, in my opinion. I don't really like this addition to her backstory. Yeah, not really a lot else to say about this episode. Bit boring, really. Not really much that I liked about it. The only thing I did like about it was Samantha Morton's boobies. I can see why Negan liked her so much. I can see why Negan wanted to have sex with her. I can't believe I'm saying this. Right, I'm going to go off to Horny Jail now, and let's talk about episode 4. Finally, an episode of Tales of the Walking Dead that I actually liked. So yeah, this isn't a half bad episode. Episode 4 focuses on two characters, Dr. Everett, who is this scientist who is studying walkers and specifically their migration patterns, as well as Amy, who is like this hyperactive survivor who is just trying to make the best of her life and enjoy her life and survive, basically. Dr. Everett and Amy are completely polar opposites when it comes to their characters. So Dr. Everett is this miserable old dude who's made himself a recluse. He's cut himself off from human contact from other people, and he believes that humans are essentially to blame for their own downfall. And it doesn't appear like he necessarily sees the walkers as a bad thing or an evil thing. I mean, he makes the point that wildlife is now flourishing since all the humans died off and the walkers took over. And yeah, he doesn't actually seem to be that upset that the human race is on the verge of extinction. Amy, on the other hand, still believes in people. She still believes that humanity can rebuild, and she's much more optimistic about the future than Dr. Everett is. Now, I know it's a kind of a cliche to have two opposite characters of opposite ideals come together in a TV show and have to, be forced to spend time together and work together. And even though it is a bit cliche, I didn't actually care, because this is by far the best episode of the show, and I think these two characters actually worked really well together. They bounced off well with one another, and they had a good chemistry. I actually found both of these one-off characters to be really interesting and quite likable, and that isn't something I can say about any of the other characters on Tales of the Walking Dead. I found Dr. Everett to be really intriguing, and I actually felt kind of sorry for him come the end of the episode, despite the fact that he does turn out to be a massive hypocrite. Now, the reason why I feel sorry and feel sympathy for Dr. Everett is because of the fact that he's so kind of committed to his work that he's just dedicated himself to leading this really kind of miserable existence where he's just accepted that he's just going to be doing this research until he dies, and then maybe someone else will take over him when he dies. And yeah, it's kind of depressing. Like, I do feel for the guy. Also, I feel like his work isn't really going to ever find any meaningful results, and I kind of just feel like he's wasting his entire life. I don't think he's going to find out anything that people don't already know. Dr. Everett's research, in my opinion, is extremely flawed. So he has all these walkers who he follows, and he signs them numbers, and he kind of just follows them on their daily routine and tries to see what they're up to. And there's this one walker in particular, Test Subject 21, who he believes is a compassionate walker, a selfless walker. And the reasoning as to why Dr. Everett believes this is because he filmed Walker 21 killing a dog, and instead of eating the dog itself, it left the dog alone so the rest of the pack, the rest of the walkers could eat it. And then he comes to the conclusion that, this walker must be a selfless and friendly walker who looks after the other walkers. But this is just, again, extremely flawed and not good scientific research, in my opinion, because there could have been any number of reasons why this walker left a dog. It could have heard a noise, it could have been distracted, it could have smelt something, it could have just gone off for any number of reasons. So to say that this walker did this to help the other walkers, yeah, it's just a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. And it's also revealed towards the end of the episode that Walker 21 was actually an old friend of his, an ex-scientist who died, an old scientist who died. So it's possible that Dr. Everett just wants to believe that there's some good in his friend. There's still some, semblance of his personality still in the walker. So he's just choosing to believe that this walker is a selfless walker, when in fact it's just the same as any other old walker. So yeah, Dr. Everett is an extremely flawed character, but I actually feel that makes him more interesting to watch. As for Amy, I liked how resourceful she was, I liked how persistent she was, she refused to take no for an answer from Dr. Everett, and I liked how these two characters, their two personalities clashed with one another. I was actually a bit sad then when Amy died at the end of the episode, because she's one of the only characters in this show who I've actually given a shit about, although I do think that Tales of the Walking Dead up until this point has been kind of scared to kill off its protagonists. I mean, this is an anthology show. This is a show about characters who are supposedly only going to be in it one time in their own individual stories. So I feel like, Tales of the Walking Dead, for a series that's supposed to be a horror series, deaths are a big part of The Walking Dead, and gories as well, whether you're a fan of it or not, they should be killing more people. So yeah, I do feel it's kind of a letdown that she's the only character who dies, the only protagonist who dies in the entire show. Well, the protagonist may die in episode 6. I don't know. I didn't watch that entire episode because it was so bad, but we'll get to that a bit later. So yeah, I found Amy's death to be sad because of two reasons. One, because I already mentioned I liked her, and two, because of the reaction Dr. Everett has to it. So Dr. Everett finds Amy as a walker, and in that moment I was thinking to myself, finally this guy is going to find the strength, he's going to find the humanity to put Amy down, and do what he should do, really. But it's an ambiguous ending because it fades to black. And prior to that scene, he was going around the area, finding walkers, putting tags on them so he could follow them and study them, as part of his research. And I believe that he did the same thing with Amy. I don't think it mattered that Amy was a friend to him, and that these two kind of, were friendly in their time together. I don't think that makes a difference because he already was studying Subject 21, who was a friend of his, an old scientist of his, and he tagged the scientist. And I think he's going to do the exact same thing to Amy. He's going to put a tag on Amy and follow her and live out his depressing life. His depressing life just following walkers until he drops dead and becomes a walker himself. And it's a very bleak ending, but I liked it. And I wish more of the episodes were like this. I mean, I may be wrong. It may be that he did kill her. And, if you want to have a more positive outlook on the ending of this episode, you can do. But, the way he was talking and, the fact that he was tagging walkers before he contacted her leads me to believe that they were hinting at the fact that he was going to just use her as another research tool. And I think that's a very depressing and sad ending, but it's one that I like. So overall, I think this is a very good episode. I mean, it does have some problems. It's kind of a bit dumb that Amy's entire group were killed off screen because Amy decides to go her separate ways. Before the end of the episode, she decides to leave Dr. Everett. She says, I'm going to go back to my group and we're going to get out of here. And next thing we know, they're all dead. And you'd think they'd be a bit, more than capable of fighting off some walkers, but they all just die off screen, which was a bit dumb. But apart from that, it's a good episode. It's the best episode of the series. I liked it. Let's move on to episode 5. I think episode 4 must have been a fluke because episode 5 is Tails back to being crap again. I did not like this episode one bit. So this episode focuses on a dude named Devon who wakes up with amnesia and he's cuffed to a walker. And he hears the walker talking to him, although it's obviously the walker isn't actually talking to him because we know that doesn't actually happen. So it's just him hallucinating. And we also get flashbacks on top of that. The episode is constantly interrupted with flashbacks every 5 minutes. And all this combines just to make an episode which is full of stuff that I hate. Anyone who's watched this channel for long enough knows that I hate this kind of stuff. I do not like this storytelling. I think The Walking Dead really overdoes it with its hallucinations and its flashbacks, and I just don't think they're very good at writing them. And that's exactly what this episode is like. It's full of flashbacks, full of awful, hallucinations, and it's just not very good. Honestly, what is the point of the talking walker? It just doesn't add anything to the show. It's really lame. Like I already said, we know walkers can't talk, so therefore we know what we're seeing on the screen isn't real, which means it isn't scary because we know it's not actually happening. We know it's in the protagonist's head. So I don't understand why the first 15 minutes of this episode is Devon talking to a walker and the walker talking to him. It doesn't add anything to the episode. It's just really bad. And as for the flashbacks, they just have like this awful grainy like retro filter on them, which just kind of seems to have been smashed out by the editor in like 5 minutes. They look really bad. And like I've already said, they just constantly interrupt the episode. Every 5 minutes there's a flashback. I just didn't care for it. I understand that writing an anthology TV episode must be pretty damn hard because you've only got 45 minutes to tell an entire story. And it's not really a long time to get the viewer invested in your protagonist and to get them invested in the story. And the point I'm trying to make is that if you've only got 45 minutes of TV to tell a story, to introduce a character, to introduce this new world, don't waste those 45 minutes on a character with amnesia and fucking flashbacks. You're just making a job harder for yourself. Now, that's not to say that an anthology story featuring a character with amnesia can't work, because I remember the episode of Black Mirror called White Bear, in which the protagonist of that episode wakes up with amnesia, and that episode is fucking phenomenal. But it's clear that Charlie Brooker, who wrote that episode, is a much more competent writer than the writers that AMC have. And the writers just weren't able to pull this concept off, in my opinion. I mean, the story itself isn't like a really bad idea per se. A protagonist with amnesia wakes up and there's like this murder mystery going on. It's not a bad idea, but the writers of this episode just aren't good enough to make it work. They're just not good enough to make it work in a 45-minute episode of TV. Come the end of the episode, I still didn't really know anything about Devon because the writers didn't dedicate any time to his character, to fleshing out his character, or didn't dedicate any time to his backstory. I still don't know anything about him. They were obviously more concerned with just creating a mystery and, just trying to keep the viewer guessing what was going on. But when the big reveal did happen at the end of the episode, and when we find out what is actually going on, I didn't care. I didn't have any reason to care about any characters. I didn't have any reason to care about any of the characters in this world because it was just so poorly developed. So anyway, it turns out that the walker that Devon was cuffed to at the start of the episode, she was murdering kids with her son, or her son was doing it and she was just compliant in it. And Devon found this happening and she tries to escape, and then he cuffs himself to her, while she's trying to escape, and then accidentally kills her. And then the entire community think that he is an evil murderer because they don't know what was going on in her basement. They don't know that she and her son were, kidnapping kids and killing kids. And then Devon has to basically clear his name and try to prove that he isn't the one who killed the kids. And he finds the son at the end of the episode, and then he exposes the son to the rest of the community, and they all kill the son, and then Devon goes free, and that's about it. That's the episode. Like I already said, the plot to this episode isn't bad per se. Like, the idea around the story isn't a bad idea, but the viewer is just thrown into this random world with these random characters, and we're expected to care about this murder mystery plot when we don't know any of these people, and we have no reason to care about any of these people. Also, the dialogue in this episode is absolutely atrocious. I'm talking Fear the Walking Dead levels of bad. I mean, Devon just speaks in really bad cliches, we don't have to do this. We can choose who we need to be. Murder is not the only way. We need to be someone worth saving, blah, 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 blah. It basically feels like the writers just took Morgan's dialogue in Fear the Walking Dead and copy and pasted it to Devon's character. His dialogue is shocking. I mean, in one of the flashbacks, we see Devon talking to the mother, the lady who was killing the kids, and they're having a conversation about the ethics of killing. And, she's saying that, sometimes killing is a necessary evil. And Devon says that, no, there must be another way. Murder shouldn't be the only option. And I swear, if I have to see one more conversation in the Walking Dead universe about the ethics of killing, I'm going to go fucking insane, because we've had 20 seasons of the Walking Dead universe. I don't need any more conversations about whether killing is right or not. This conversation has been done to death. I don't need to see characters going, we shouldn't kill. It's not the right thing. We shouldn't do it. I'm sick of it. We have it all the time on Fear the Walking Dead. We've seen this conversation play out many times on The Walking Dead as well. Just stop with this fucking conversation, please. It's killing me. I also found that the acting was really off in this episode, especially the French characters. I mean, there's this one dude in particular who's giving a speech to Devon before they're going to kill him in the most, non-convenient way ever, most contrived way, going to kill him by crushing him in a car. But anyway, he's giving a speech about how when Devon dies, his name will disappear and no one will know who he is. Sorry, really bad French accent there. But it just sounded terrible. It just sounded like he was putting on a bad French accent himself. I don't know. It's something about the way the lines were delivered sounded really bad. And also the character of Devon himself, his acting seems really off. Especially at the start of the episode, where he wakes up with a walker cuffed to him. And you'd expect a dude in that situation to be screaming, oh my God, what's going on? But he's just going, oh no, what's happening? What is going on? I don't know. He just seems really toned down when he should have been a bit more, a bit more crazy, a bit more panicked. But it seemed like his character really toned it down and it was kind of expressionless. And yeah, something about his delivery just didn't work for me, which is a shame because the dude who plays Devon is A-Train out of The Boys. And I've watched The Boys and I know the dude can act. He's a good actor. But in this episode, he just seems to phone it in. And I don't know whether that's because maybe he knew that the script was shit. I don't know. But yeah, this isn't his best acting performance. So yeah, in conclusion, this is just a bad murder mystery plot with a protagonist who has amnesia with countless flashbacks in it. It doesn't really go anywhere. I have no reason to care about any of the characters. Just a waste of time, really. So let's move on to episode 6. Episode 6 is yet another episode which features protagonists who experience hallucinations and visions and every other horror trope you can think of, and I turned it off after 25 minutes. This episode is absolutely awful. So basically what we have are two characters in the woods. The episode begins with these two characters in the woods, and the lady character says, we need to find shelter, so let's go to this witch's house. This friend of mine told me about this witch healer who lives near here, so let's go to her house. Yes, now apparently we have witches in The Walking Dead for some fucking reason. So yes, they go to her house. And then this lady is like, look, I don't want you to stay. You must leave in the morning. And they're like, oh, you're gonna kill us. We can't go. Blah, 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 blah. And basically the dude stands up. They're having dinner and he stands up, I guess, to threaten her because he's pissed off that he doesn't want to leave. Which the shock of this then causes her to choke on her food. And they just let her die. They've never heard of the Heimlich maneuver. They just let her die. And it's just, hilariously bad. She dies because she choked on some food. And then these two decide that they're going to stay in the dead lady's house. And then what follows is an episode about a haunted house, because I assume she leaves a curse on the house or some shit, because after she dies, they all start seeing like visions of her. You know, they see her as a ghost, and there's voices in the house. And there's one bit, I kid you not, where crucifixes, like these little Jesus crucifixes, which are on the wall, come to life, like something out of fucking Toy Story, come to life and attack the lady. It's fucking ridiculous. It's so bad. And basically what this episode is generic horror. This is a generic horror episode. Like, this is something, like, this is like your average shitty horror films that are in a cinema. You know, I don't like generic horror because I normally just find it predictable. I mean, well, I certainly didn't predict the crucifix Jesus is coming alive, but I normally find it predictable and just not scary. It's not something that I choose to watch. And if I wanted to watch an episode, if I wanted to watch a story about a haunted house, I could just choose many other shows to watch that. That's not why I watch The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead as a series is supposed to be, you know, a semi-realistic take on what would happen if zombies took over. I mean, yes, it does, you know, veer on being unrealistic at times. I mean, we had a tiger in it, in The Walking Dead, and, you know, we had the junkyard people, and Negan is a dude who talks to his baseball bat. Yes, it does go to a bit weird and a bit out there territory, but it's still kind of realistic, you know, much more realistic take than other zombie stories. And it's, you know, mainly a survival show, a survival drama, if you will, really. It's not a show about supernatural witches and curses. That's not why I watch The Walking Dead. There is no place for witches or curses or the supernatural in the Walking Dead universe, at least in my opinion. This is just a zombie survival show. If I wanted to watch, you know, supernatural stuff, there's thousands of other shows I could watch. That's not why I watched The Walking Dead. So I fucking hated this episode. I have no interest in watching a generic horror story about two characters I don't care about in a haunted house. And that's why after 20 minutes I switched off. I don't know who this episode is for. I really don't. It's really bad. So that's about all I can say about that one. There you go, that's Tales of the Walking Dead. And to be honest, I had very low expectations going into this show. I was always of the opinion that this was just going to be a stopgap between the last season of Fear the Walking Dead and what is the final season of The Walking Dead. Just something that AMC could put on their streaming platform so people stay subscribed to the service. So, you know, people who are fans of The Walking Dead stay subscribed. And that's all it's basically turned out to be. It's just a really cheap, low budget, low quality show that AMC have whacked out just to keep people paying for their service. And it's really disappointing, you know, because this show had potential. There is the potential, you know, to make a good anthology series in the Walking Dead universe. There's a lot of amazing, you know, interesting stories they could have told, but every story in this show is just boring. It's just each episode is focused on mainly one or two protagonists, and we have these really dull stories that I just don't care about at all. And I guess the reason why they've done that is to just make it as cheap as they could. I recently watched The Boys Diabolical, which is an anthology series set in the Boys universe, and that's actually really fucking good. That's really fun. Yes, there's a couple of duds, but overall I really enjoyed that. And the difference in quality between that show and this is night and day. This is just so much worse. I also found it kind of disappointing that we had an anthology series where every episode was set in the US. It's really annoying because, you know, they had the opportunity here to go anywhere around the world. And yes, I know we have the French Canadians in episode 5, but I think they said that episode was set in Maine, so it is still set in the US. But we had the opportunity here to see walkers in places we haven't seen so far, to go to different locations, but the majority of these episodes are just set in the same boring woods that we see in The Walking Dead all the time. And again, I believe that was probably a conscious decision, a decision they made to keep the show cheap. They didn't want to shoot in very, very dirty environments because it would cost more, but it would have been so much more interesting if the show was set in different locations. I mean, we could have had an episode set in the Antarctic, for example. Imagine an episode set in a really cold place. It could have been like a homage to The Thing. That'd have been interesting. We could have had an episode about like a tribe, maybe a tribe in the Amazon, like a tribe who haven't come into contact with, you know, modern civilization, and seeing them try to deal with walkers. We could have had an episode set in Europe, which would have made sense considering the fact that The World Beyond's post-credit scene is set in Europe, and supposedly the Daryl show is set in Europe as well. We could have had an episode set on a space station. Imagine an episode set in space where the astronauts are in space and they see the Earth up in flames, and, you know, they learn about the Walker virus and they slowly lose communication and they run out of supplies and they're just left there to basically die in space. And these are just ideas which I just came up with on the spot right now, okay? These are just me ad-libbing, making this stuff up. But these ideas to me are infinitely more interesting than the ideas we got on the show. Like, this show is in a really bad place in its creative, you know, in creativity. It's really, there is no creativity to it. There's so many more interesting things you could do with the concept of this. There's so many more different places you could go to, but nope, we've just got all episodes set in the same woods in the US. We could have even gone back to Mexico, the setting of some of the episodes of Fear the Walking Dead Season 2. There's just so much more we could have done, so much more that would have been more visually interesting than what we got. But that's Tales of the Walking Dead in a nutshell, really. It's a low-budget, low-quality show that's only there as a stopgap, between seasons of Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead. It's not really worth your time, in my opinion. If you haven't watched it already, I wouldn't waste your time on it. Maybe just watch episode 4, because that's actually a decent episode. I like that. I like the characters. I'd be interested to, I'd like to see Dr. Everett again at some point. I like that episode, but as for the rest of it, it's not worth your time. It's really not. Disappointing. My expectations, were really low going into this, and I've been proven right, basically. This show is not good. So let me know your thoughts, in the comments below. And sorry it's taken me so long to make a video, but I'm back now. I'm here. The members Q&A video, the much delayed Q&A video will be out soon as well. So I am back, and we'll be making videos semi-regularly again now. And thanks for all your support. Let me know what you think about this show. Have you watched it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. And I shall see you all very soon. Take care. Goodbye.